Check 1, 2. All right. Good morning, everyone. Here we go. We are going to talk about creating a stippling brush. This is going to be useful for us in a number of upcoming projects. So what you want to do to create your stippling brush is press the letter B to activate the brush. And then what you want to do is open the brush window. So if we go to Window, Brushes, okay, and then activate the brush settings. I believe the keyboard shortcut for that is F5, your F5 key on the keyboard. We want to create a brush that has space between the round brush marks. Okay, so if we start with a standard brush, we go to the very top of the list and choose the hard round brush. Initially your spacing is going to be tight, so it will create a solid line. What we want to do is, instead of having a solid line, we want a dotted line. Okay, so regardless of your brush size, you want to increase the amount of spacing that you have so that you start to see gaps between each dot. This is going to be useful for the pointillism approach that we're trying to work with this week. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck the transfer button. Smoothing is okay. The shape dynamics, it's checked, but we're not going to add anything here. We're just increasing our spacing. Okay. Now, regardless of what our brush size is, when we make our lines now, they are dotted. Okay? You can adjust the spacing as you go. In fact, it may be a good idea to play around with this to find out what is your preferred method, depending on the amount of value of light and dark you need to add to an image. For today, what we're going to do is open up a JPEG from Schoology, and we're going to add that to our layout here. So I'm going to go ahead and float this window right here. There we go. It's a little big for my taste, to be honest. The resolution on my desktop is not what I would prefer it be for you guys. But that aside, we really just need to know where our layers are. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and collapse these icons. We have our layers window here for when we need it. What we're going to do is open a JPEG that you can download from your week 5 agenda called the value chart stippling. It's going to look like this. Basically, what we want to do is go from light to dark, but instead of coloring it in solid or using the paint bucket, we are going to use dotted lines. So we're going to activate a second feature called scattering. So if I increase the scatter and the count, let's play with that a little bit. Let's look at our settings. Okay, we want a little more space, maybe a little more scatter, a little less count. There we go. So what that's going to do is it's going to color in dots. Now we don't want to randomly do dots, we want to do a controlled amount of dots. So let's take a look. Maybe I'll shrink this down some. So for the dark area, we're going to want this pretty tightly packed. So in order to paint just inside the dark section, I'm going to press the letter W. W activates the selection tool for the magic wand. Some of you may have the object selection or the quick selection. I want you to make sure that you click and hold on this button and choose the magic wand. And we're going to take our time clicking in here. Oops, it's not doing contiguous. Let's try that again. Click and then click again. There we go. So we're going to go through each one of these rectangular sections and paint in dots. So if I press B and I paint, you can see we're getting dotted lines, and they're very densely packed. So that's going to read as a very dark area, and that's what we want. Okay, this is going to be the most densely packed of areas. Now we can increase our spacing a bit more. Move to the next one, press W, B for brush. Alright, and we're just going to move on down the line and try to get this balanced. Each time we want a little bit more spacing. Okay. Press W again, B for brush. Now, we may have to go over it a second time until it looks as densely packed as we'd like. I think I'd like to add a little more to there, but let's just keep playing with adjusting our spacing. Okay. Adjust the spacing even more. So the overall goal is we want light to dark. So W for the magic wand, B for our brush, and I'm going to increase the spacing even more. Now as I draw back and forth with more spacing, you can see it's not filling up with very many dots, and that's okay. So we want it to be relatively light. Okay. If you prefer, you could use the rectangle marquee. You know, I wanted to make this one a little more dense. I could click and drag a box around the area I want to paint. B for brush, pack it in a little tighter again. Good. I can hit M for the rectangle marquee, click and drag. B for brush, and I'll do another pass with this brush because I want to have a little bit more density in some of these areas. Not quite as dense as this, but I'm just kind of going through and rebalancing until I feel like my chart is what I want it to be. So I'll do B for brush again, adjust the spacing. Good. Alright, and I'm really just looking to have more density in the darker areas, less density in the lighter areas. So again, I might want to make this one darker. Just use my same brush again. And I can do the exact same thing in some of these other areas. If this one needs to look more densely packed, B for brush. Again, we'll do a little spacing. M for the marquee. I'm going to do a little bit more in this first one, and then I think I'll be ready to go. It may help to adjust your scatter as well. You can have it tight or loose. And I feel pretty good about my value chart, so I'm going to go to File, Save a Copy. And I'm going to put my last name in front of it. And I'll save it onto my Pictures folder or my desktop. I have a folder on my desktop for digital art demonstrations. I'll save it as a JPEG. Alright, and I will also save it as a Photoshop document. PSD, right there at the top. There we go. Desktop, my folder, put our name at the front. And that's how you can make a stippling brush and a value chart.